All right, so we're beginning layer 3. We're using a number 2 round brush, and we're painting in color number 2. And we just get right around the edge of the forehead with color number 2. We then follow that up with a little bit of color number 3. We begin to blend those colors together. And we're leaving just a little bit of that color number 4 showing. I'll make that color number 2. Leave a little bit of the color number 2 showing. And we're going to go back in and we're going to add some more color number 4. Because we don't want to completely cover it, but we mostly got it covered. So we just get a little bit in there. Now go in and add some more of that color. We're extending it outward. Some more color number 3. We follow that up with some color number 4. And we just get the paint, we're just going over the edge just a little bit where the colors meet. So if the color's really thick, it completely covers and it doesn't really blend so much. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to wipe the brush off. I'm going to go back in and I'm going to diffuse the edge. So I'm going in, diffusing the edge where the colors meet. And I have just a little bit of color number 3 on the brush. So I'll wipe the brush off. I begin to diffuse the edge some more. Now, very important to this process is the consistency of the paint. Right now, the paint is the consistency of, I'd say, between ice cream and oil. And there are several different consistencies I like to use when I'm blending paint. When the paint first comes out of a tube of heavy body acrylics, when it comes out the tube, it's the consistency of about yogurt. You add a few drops of water, it becomes the consistency of ice cream. I mean, melted ice cream. You add a few more drops, it becomes the consistency of oil. Now, if you get like a 1-to-1 ratio of paint to water, because that's what we're using to dilute the paint, you get a 1-to-1 ratio, it becomes about the consistency of milk. Or I'm just calling it the consistency of milk, because it's not exactly as thin as water. And it's not completely super thin, you know? And another consistency that I love to use, like for really, really thin washes, like I'm painting on paper, I'm doing like a watercolor kind of effect, I'll use about a 5-to-1 or a 10-to-1 ratio. It's almost like Kool-Aid. The paint is there just to like tint the water a little bit. But in this painting, we have the paint, the consistency somewhere between melted ice cream and oil. All right, so we're starting to paint in the eyebrow. Well, we're painting in that area right below the eyebrow. And I always start off with the darker paint. Wipe the brush off, clean it off, and we're adding some color number 3. And we go in and paint that small area. So I start off with the darker color, then finish off with the lighter color. And I don't try to overwork anything. I wipe off the brush and I begin to diffuse the edges. It's very easy in the earlier stages to want to overwork the painting and blend everything all at once, but just take your time. It's all done in layers with this technique. But there are some very big problems with blending, because not all colors blend together the same way. Colors that are similar blend easier than colors that are very different. So if you're blending a yellow with a dark yellow, then those colors should blend together really easily. But if you're blending yellow with purple, it should be a bit more difficult. It doesn't always work the same, so try not to get too frustrated, because these are things you don't figure out until you're in the middle of painting, and it can get really frustrating sometimes. So I go and I begin to blend in the bridge of the nose, and as you can see, the layers beneath it show through. That area where it had the pencil mark or that very hard line, it shows through. This isn't really a problem. It's one of the reasons why I like acrylic paint anyway. You can see every single layer. Acrylic paint is very translucent. Now, if we're painting really thickly, you wouldn't be able to see it at all. It's because we're using very thin layers. And I believe it adds to the overall painting. And when we're using this small brush in these small tight areas, we're using mostly the toe of the brush. So your brush has to be able to make a really nice point in order to do this correctly. So you're going to have to really take care of your brushes, or just go through a lot of brushes, as I used to before I learned to take care of them. You have to wash them every once in a while, you know. And if you're going to take a break, wash it. Make sure the paint is completely off the brush. And it'll last you for a good amount of time. And again, I paint in small areas. I didn't try to paint in the entire cheekbone. I just picked one spot and painted that in, and then moved to the next spot. Now I'm going in with color number 3, and I'm beginning to diffuse the edges. I'm covering over color number 2. So add a little more color number 3. I go in with color number 4, and I begin to diffuse that edge. At this point in the painting, I'm going in and making sure everything is painted in completely. I don't want to see any white gaps where the color of the canvas shows. And I'm making sure every part of the painting is painted in correctly. Everything is blended right. We're now going to go in and we're going to paint that shape right under the nose. As usual, I start with the dark color first, which is color number 2. I go back in with color number 3, and we begin to blend around the edges, and we're bringing that color into color number 2. I go back in with color number 3, and I begin to blend it in some more. You notice I leave a thin line of that area unpainted. Because I really want to leave a hard line, leaving a hard shape. Because the more you blend it, the more the colors mix, the more the colors change. So I'll go in and fill the area with paint as we're adding a whole new layer. Because we're not just focusing in on blending, we're actually filling the entire canvas with paint. So I'll go in with color number 4. I begin to overlap color number 3. And I paint into color number 3 a little bit more. And we're blending and we're diffusing edges together. I go in with some color number 3, and we're blending the edges together. Everything is coming together really nicely at this stage. It could get a bit chaotic in the beginning, but ultimately it all works together for the good. Diffuse the edges a little bit more, and we go over the line of the lip once again. Because I wanted to create a different color, a lighter color. We're now going to paint just under the nose. And we're just adding some wet paint. We're about to blend. As the process always goes, we start off with the darker color. I wipe the brush off. I begin to add some of that color number 4. I go in and I begin to blend. And we're blending very simple shapes. Right now, we're just blending a line. When you're focusing in on the small areas, it always comes down to a really basic shape or a line or a curve or something like that. Like you're painting the bridge of the nose, you're just painting a line, and that should be your focus, just that one area. I'm going to paint in the little light spot just right above the lip. So I add color number 2. I completely fill up the canvas. Wherever color number 2, color number 4 is. It's color number 4. And I finally add color number 5. I diffuse the edges a bunch. And these colors, they blend easily because they're so similar. And now I'm going to paint in the next cheek. And I follow the line like I did for the back. I wipe my brush off. I add some color number 5. I'm getting mixed up with my colors right now. We add some color number 5, and we go in and we follow the shape. This, of course, creates a very seamless blend. So if you learn these techniques really well, you're going to begin to make quantum leaps in your art. But something strange begins to happen. You begin to get frustrated sometimes. A lot of times when I get frustrated, I just need to take a break, you know. I'll think that everything is awful and it's not working. I normally take a break. I'll read something. It's really good to read something, you know, switch your brain over to something else. Watch a little TV or maybe surf the net, go on social media. By the time I get back, you know, I'm in a different state of mind. I'm able to paint again. But sometimes the feeling just doesn't go away, you know? You look at your work and you think that it's awful. It's not really that it's awful. It's that, you know, you're growing. And that's what I believe it is. I believe when you're growing, you begin to get unsettled. You get unglued. It's because you can do better than the work that you're doing. So you won't be satisfied with what you see in front of you. It doesn't mean that your work is awful. It means that you're growing and you're about to start doing some better work. It's actually a really good thing. It's a really, really good thing. If you don't abandon your work and you keep going and you keep going and you keep pushing forward, you're going to see that your work is really, really improving. But the beginning of that is that really unsettled feeling. And you have to really work through it. All right, so I paint in color number 5. The cheekbone and the nose. I'm going to go in and paint around the eye socket or the eyelid. So we're now painting in the eyelid. That was color number 3. We're now switching to color number 4. And you see it's blending nicely. By the time you get to the 3rd layer, it should be working together pretty nicely. And as you can see, we're painting with the point. We're using the toe of the brush. I add some more color number 4, and we use the toe of the brush to paint in that area right above the eyelid. Now we're just going to fill that area with paint. So the paint is somewhat light on the brush. I use it to diffuse the edges. We're now going to paint in the eyebrow. I normally start with the darker color first, but this time I go with the lighter color, which is color number 4. And because I go over the edges slightly, the edges begin to diffuse some. So I go back in with color number 2, and I just go over those edges just slightly. I'm not going to blend it a lot. I let it have that hard look. So I go back in to blend in the forehead. When we're painting in the face, certain areas are pretty soft and certain areas are pretty hard. So when you're painting in like the forehead, the cheeks, maybe the chin, or the skin tone in general, the blend should be pretty soft. All the edges should be pretty soft. But there are some hard edges, like the edges around the eyes, the eyelid, that should be pretty hard. The eyelashes, that's another very hard edge. So is the eyebrows and the nostrils. And when I'm painting, I make sure I distinguish between these edges. So you see that the eyebrows, it has a soft edge, but not really as soft as the forehead. And if you look at the eyelid, it's a pretty hard edge. Same with the eyes, really hard edges. So now I'm going in and I'm diffusing the edges. I'm using color number 5, and I'm sticking to the number 2 round brush. And it's blending. It's the same thing over and over. I'm just blending these small shapes in. I fill in that area with color number 5. I go in and diffuse the edges. I'm now ready to paint in the chin. We use color number 2 first. Wipe off the brush. And now we go in with color number 3. We're making sure that color number 3 mixes in with color number 2. I wipe off the brush again, and with a dry brush, I blend the edges in a little bit more. I now add some color number 4, and it goes right over the color number 3. I'm going to go in now and I diffuse the edges. And there's a little bit of that color number 3 on the brush. I now go back in with color number 4, and we cover over the jawline and we begin to diffuse the edges. Now I begin to cover that area with color number 4. I want to diffuse it a bit more, so I go back over it with some more color number 4. I again add some more color number 4 to the brush and create a hard line for the bottom of the jawline. So I begin to follow the shape, and I'm going to paint in the back. And as usual, we use a generous amount of paint, and I begin to paint in that shape and fill the area with paint. And as you can see, the paint remains wet for a good amount of time, but I'm working rather quickly. All right, now we go in to paint in the back. I wipe the brush off and follow the shape to blend the colors in or diffuse the edge where the two colors meet. Put a lot of paint, so I begin to extend that paint down some. So of course I go in with some darker color and I paint in around the back, around the shoulder. One small area at a time, one shape at a time. I go in with some color number 5 and I paint right around that shape. And again, same process again. I follow the line. But I'm very conscious that I have enough paint on the canvas so it doesn't dry immediately. And now add some lighter color and I follow the same line. And while I'm following with the line, I'm painting with the belly, as you can see. I wipe some of that paint off, and I begin to diffuse the edges with a dry brush. Now I go in with round number 6 and I fill out the space. And begin to paint over that pencil line. Trying to get rid of that pencil line. It's a little bit dark. This is where the translucency of the paint kind of works against you. All right, with the same number 6 brush, I begin to paint in the arm. And we're going up to right around the shoulders. We now go in with color number 4 with small feathery brush strokes. We paint up the arm and right around the shoulder. And the more you paint, the more the paint comes off the toe of the brush. And if it's not too much paint on the toe of the brush, I begin to blend, because it won't dilute it too much. All right, so I go back in with color number 3 and I work it across the edge of the arm. It's creating a hard edge, so I go in with color number 4 and we work some color number 4 in. Now, with a clean brush, I begin to diffuse the edges. I'm working the colors together. I'm creating that third color. Next up, wash layer.